we're going live with poetry. I was, you saw the title on this. I was asking the question of whether poetry invented romantic love or romantic love invented poetry, and a friend of mine was saying, well, that's a dumb question. There's always been love. Well, there always has been love. People are always going to want some other person, right? But romantic love, I think, is a strange concept. I'm not sure if society started creating the idea of romantic love and poets glommed onto it, or poets invented it as sort of a selling technique and society thought that's a good idea. But romantic love is kind of a strange thing. If you think about all the constant barrage of music we get on romantic love, all the songs you listen to as a teenager were all about romantic love. I think we're constantly brainwashed with the idea of romantic love. So I wonder how natural it is. So it's just a question. I don't have an answer to it, but it is a question to think about sometimes. But that's really sort of my excuse, too, for reading some poems about love that I just really like. And they look at different concepts of love. They're not all about romantic love as a wonderful thing. They're about romantic love from different directions. One of I think, the very best poems on romantic love ever was written in the 14th century. And it's short, it's direct. It just is, I think, sort of the ultimate romantic love poem. And you may have come across it before because it's quoted a lot. It's just, I said, 4 lines. The poet just says, "Western wind, when wilt thou blow? The small rain down can rain. Christ, that my love were in my arms and I were in my bed again." Now that just says it all. But I'll read some others that are perhaps more beautiful, even though they're no more direct than that one. A classic that talks about what love is, and one that people like to think about. And particularly, I think, for those of us as we are getting older, it's a good poem by Shakespeare, one of his sonnets. "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the remover to remove. Oh no, it is an ever fixed mark that looks on tempests and is never shaken. It is the star to every wandering bark whose worth's unknown, although his height be taken. Love's not time's fool, though rosy lips and cheeks within his bending sickle's compass come. Love alters not with his brief hours and weeks, but bears it out even to the edge of doom. If this be error and upon me proved, I never writ, nor no man ever loved." John Donne, mid-17th century poet, he comes in and out of favor. You probably know him in his later works when he was a wild boy as a young man, but you probably know him in his later works when he fell in love and got reformed and became a preacher. And he wrote great things like, "No man is an island unto himself entire. Sin not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." But when he was young, I said he was a little wild. And he wrote some good poems on love back in his younger days. And some of them are kind of fun and cynical. This is one that's a really fairly famous one of his. And it is a little cynical, but it's a great poem. It's called "Go and Catch a Falling Star." "Go and catch a falling star, get with child a mandrake root. Tell me where all past years are, or who cleft the devil's foot. Teach me to hear mermaids singing, or to keep off envy's stinging, and find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. If thou beest born to strange sights, things invisible to see, ride 10,000 days and nights till age snow-white hairs on thee. Thou, when thou return'st, will tell me all strange wonders that befell thee, and swear nowhere lives a woman true and fair. If thou find'st one, let me know. Such a pilgrimage were sweet. Yet do not, I would not go, though at next door we might meet. Though she were true when you met her, and last till you wrote your letter, yet she would be false ere I come to 2 or 3. And another 17th century poem that I bet you've heard parts of, And they must have been fairly cynical in the 17th century. Romantic love was clearly still around, but there was a touch to it that was a little different, just like this John Donne poem. This is one that, again, you might have heard bits of. It's called To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell. Had we but whirled enough in time, this coyness, lady, were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our long love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges side should rubies find. I by the tide of Humber would complain. I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow vaster than empires and more slow. 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze. 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. For, lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lesser rate. But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long-preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Now, therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour than languish in his slow chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up into one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus, though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we shall make him run. Right. Like that. The grave's a fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace, he says. Want to try something a little different on you. It's a somewhat longer poem. It's not really long, but it's a little longer than this one I just read, but it's kind of hypnotic. And see if you like it. It's a different sort of love. It's called The Lady of Shalott by Timson. It was written in 1842. On either side the river lie long fields of barley and of rye that clothe the wold and meet the sky, and through the field the road runs by to many-towered Camelot, and up and down the people go, gazing where the lilies blow, round an island there below, the island of Shalott. Willows whiten, aspens quiver, little breezes dusk and shiver through the wave that runs forever by the island in the river flowing down to Camelot. 4 gray walls and 4 gray towers overlook a space of flowers, and the silent isle embowers the Lady of Shalott. By the margin, willow-veiled, slide the heavy barges trailed by slow horses, and unhailed the shallop flitteth silken-sailed, skimming down to Camelot. But who hath seen her wave her hand, or at the casement seen her stand, or is she known in all the land, the Lady of Shalott? Only reapers reaping early in among the bearded barley hear a song that echoes cheerly from the river winding clearly down to towered Camelot. And by the moon the reaper weary, piling sheaves in uplands airy, listening whispers, it is the fairy Lady of Shalott. There she weaves by day and night a magic web with colors gay. She has heard a whisper say, a curse is on her if she stay to look down to Camelot. She knows not what the curse may be, and so she weaveth steadily, and little other care hath she, the Lady of Shalott. And moving through a mirror clear that hangs before her all the year, shadows of the world appear, and there she sees the highway near, winding down to Camelot. There the river eddy whirls, and there the surly village churls, and there the red cloaks of market girls pass onward by Shalott. Sometimes a troop of damsels glad, an abbot on an ambling pad, sometimes a curly shepherd lad, or long-haired page in crimson lad, goes by to towered Camelot. And sometimes through the mirror blue, the knights come riding two and two. She hath no loyal light and true, the Lady of Shalott. But in her web she still delights to weave the mirror's magic sights, for often through the silent nights, a funeral with plumes and lights and music went to Camelot. Or when the moon was overhead, came two young lovers lately wed. I am half sick of shadows, said the Lady of Shalott. A bowshot from her bower eaves, he rode between the barley sheaves. The sun came dazzling through the leaves and flamed upon the brazen greaves of bold Sir Lancelot. A red-crossed knight forever kneeled to a lady in his shield that sparkled on the yellow field beside remote Shalott. The gemmy bridle glittered free, like to some branch of stars we see, hung in the golden galaxy. The bridle bells rang merrily as he rode down towards Camelot. And from his blazoned baldric slung a mighty silver bugle hung, and as he rode his armor rung beside remote Shalott. All in the blue unclouded weather, thick jeweled shone the saddle leather. The helmet and the helmet feather burned like one burning flame together as he rode down to Camelot. As often through the purple night, below the starry clusters bright, some bearded meteor trailing light moves over still Shalott. His broad clear brow in sunlight glowed, on burnished hooves his war horse trode. From underneath his helmet flowed his coal black curls as he rode down to Camelot. From the bank and from the river he flashed into her crystal mirror, "Tirra-lirra by the river," sang Sir Lancelot. She left the web, she left the loom, she made 3 paces through the room. She saw the water lily bloom, she saw the helmet and the plume, and she looked down to Camelot. Out flew the web and floated wide, the mirror cracked from side to side. "The curse is come upon me," cried the Lady of Shalott. In the stormy east wind straining, the pale yellow woods were waning, the broad stream in his banks complaining, heavily the low sky raining over towered Camelot. Down she came and found a boat, beneath a willow left afloat, and round about the prow she wrote, "The Lady of Shalott." And down the rimmer's dim expanse, like some bold seer in a trance, seeing all his own mischance, with a glassy countenance did she look to Camelot. And at the closing of the day, she loosed the chain, and down she lay. The broad stream bore her far away, the Lady of Shalott. Lying robed in snowy white that loosely flew to left and right, the leaves upon her falling light, through the noises of the night, she floated down to Camelot. And as the boat head wound along the willowy hills and fields among, they heard her singing her last song, the Lady of Shalott. Heard a carol, mournful, holy, chanted loudly, chanted lowly, till her blood was frozen slowly, and her eyes were darkened wholly, turned towards towered Camelot. For ere she reached upon the tide the first house by the waterside, singing in her song she died, the Lady of Shalott. Under tower and balcony, by garden wall and gallery, a gleaming shape she floated by, dead pale between the houses high, silent into Camelot. Out upon the wharves they came, knight and burgher, lord and dame, and round the prow they read her name, the Lady of Shalott. Who is this, and what is here? And in the lighted palace near died the sound of royal cheer, and they crossed themselves for fear, all the knights at Camelot. But Lancelot mused a little space. He said, "She has a lovely face. God in his mercy send her grace, the Lady of Shalott." Of course, Tennyson knew, and we know too, presumably, that it was love that brought down Camelot. Not this particular one, but love anyway that brought down Camelot. And so, the fact that she died for love of Lancelot is sort of not a good sign for this. That's one of the problems with romantic love, is that people do tend to die of it more than anything else. Whether it's Romeo and Juliet committing suicide for each other, or, people leaping off cliffs, or Leander swimming the Hellespont, or whatever. People do die for that, for romantic love. That's one of the reasons I say I think poetry invented it to give itself good stories. Another poem from the 19th century British tradition. You'd have to decide if this is a love poem or something else. It's a poem about a marriage, but I'm not sure it's about love. There was a book that came out this year by a woman named Maggie O'Farrell called The Marriage Proposal. I know you may have seen it. It's about the marriage between the Duke of Ferrara and I think it's Catherine de' Medici, one of the first de' Medici daughters. And there's not a lot known about their marriage, but it didn't work out well. She died not long into it of fairly mysterious circumstances. Anyway, and it's this particular poem that O'Farrell says she got her inspiration for that book from. So this is the poem, and it's spoken by the Duke himself, the Duke of Ferrara, and it's called My Last Duchess. That's my last Duchess painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. Will it please you to sit and look at her? I said Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance, but to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I. And they seemed as if they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. Sir, 'twas not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess' cheek. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half-flush that dies along her throat. Such stuff was courtesy, she thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whate'er she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. Sir, 'twas all one. My favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherries some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech or blush at least. She thanked men good, but thanked them somehow, I know not how, as if she ranked my gift of a 900-year-old name with anybody's gift. Who'd stoop to blame this sort of trifling? Even had you skill in speech, which I have not, to make your will quite clear to such a one and say, just this or that in you disgust me, here you miss or there exceed the mark. And if she let herself be lessoned so, nor plainly set her wits to yours, forsooth, and made excuse, even then would be some stooping, and I choose, sir, never to stoop. Oh, sir, she smiled, no doubt, whene'er I passed, but who passed without much the same smile? This grew, I gave commands, then all smiles stopped together. There she stands as if alive. Will it please you to rise? We'll meet the company below then. I repeat, the Count your master's known munificence is ample warrant that no just pretense of mine for dowry will be disallowed, though his fair daughter's self, as I avowed at starting, is my object. Nay, we'll go down together, sir. Notice Neptune, though, taming a seahorse, thought a rarity, which Claus of Innsbruck cast in bronze for me. He ended up, the Duke of Ferrara, having 3 wives, and none of them produced any children. So the rumor that he killed her because she didn't have children, who's to know? It's an interesting story, and I said I just read the book myself a few months ago, so it's I recommend it. It's fascinating, sort of the way she projects personalities back into this very sort of skeleton of the poem that we have here. A different sort of love to show that arranged marriages can be love as well. This is a poem that's been translated. It's an 8th century poem by a Chinese writer named Li Po, and it was translated in the 20th century, and it is about an arranged marriage that turns into something else. It's called The River Merchant's Wife, a Letter. While my hair was still cut straight across my forehead, I played about the front gate, pulling flowers. You came by on bamboo stilts, playing horse. You walked about my seat playing with blue plums, and we went on living in the village of Chokan, two small people without dislike or suspicion. At 14, I married my Lord you. I never laughed, being bashful. Lowering my head, I looked at the wall. Called to 1,000 times, I never looked back. At 15, I stopped scowling. I desired my dust to be with yours forever, mingled with yours forever, and forever and forever. Why should I climb the lookout? At 16, you departed. You went into far Kuto Yin by the river of swirling eddies, and you have been gone 5 months. The monkeys make sorrowful noises overhead. You dragged your feet when you went out. By the gate now the moss is grown, the different mosses, too deep to clear them away. The leaves fall early this autumn in wind. The paired butterflies are already yellow with August over the grass in the west garden. They hurt me. I grow older. If you are coming down through the narrows of the river Kiang, please let me know beforehand, and I will come out to meet you as far as Chofu Sa. The time here. You probably know the story about Demeter and Persephone and Hades, the fact that Demeter is Persephone's mother. She was the goddess of the fertility in the earth, and Persephone was her daughter. And they were out in the meadow one day. Hades, the god of the underworld, saw her, fell in love with Persephone, just couldn't resist grabbing her up or taking her off to the underworld with him because he was just so madly in love with her. It's about this thing about love. He was just so madly in love with her. Of course, Demeter sulked about it and made trouble, and Zeus had to work out a deal. But a contemporary American poet named Louise Gluck, who, as a matter of fact, just won the Nobel Prize last year. That's how good she is. She took that situation and wrote a poem about it, thinking about what was Hades thinking when he grabbed Persephone up. How did he think he could make her happy in the underworld? She who was the daughter of the earth goddess and loved to frolic amidst the flowers. How was she going to be happy hanging out down in the underworld with him? So she wrote this poem about how he was trying to arrange things for her. It's called A Myth of Devotion. When Hades decided he loved this girl, he built for her a duplicate of Earth, everything the same, down to the meadow, but with a bed added. Everything the same, including sunlight, because it would be hard on a young girl to go so quickly from bright light to utter darkness. Gradually, he thought, he'd introduce the night, first as the shadows of fluttering leaves, then moon, then stars, then no moon, no stars. Let Persephone get used to it slowly. In the end, he thought, she'd find it comforting. A replica of Earth, except there was love there. Doesn't everyone want love? He waited many years building a world, watching Persephone in the meadow. Persephone, a smeller, a tasty. If you have one appetite, he thought, you have them all. Doesn't everyone want to feel in the night the beloved body, compass, pole star, to hear the quiet breathing that says, I am alive? That means also you are alive because you hear me. You are here with me. And when one turns, the other turns. That's what he felt, the Lord of Darkness, looking at the world he had constructed for Persephone. It never crossed his mind that there'd be no more smelling here, certainly no more eating. Guilt, terror, the fear of love, these things he couldn't imagine. No lover ever imagines them. He dreams, he wonders what to call this place. First he thinks, the new hell, then the garden. In the end, he decides to name it Persephone's girlhood. A soft light rising above the level meadow behind the bed. He takes her in his arms. He wants to say, I love you, nothing can hurt you, but he thinks, this is a lie. So he says in the end, you're dead, nothing can hurt you, which seems to him a more promising beginning, more true. Well, if the Lord of the underworld falls in love with you, it is going to be awkward. Okay, and then this one by a contemporary British poet named Carol Duffy, which I think it It just cracks me up, but it's so funny and so true at the same time. It's called Valentine. What do you give your lover for a Valentine for Valentine's Day? And she says, not a red rose or a satin heart. I give you an onion. It is a moon wrapped in brown paper. It promises light like the careful undressing of love. Here, it will blind you with tears like a lover. It will make your reflection a wobbling photo of grief. I am trying to be truthful here. Not a cute card or a kissygram. I give you an onion. Its fierce kiss will stay on your lips, possessive and faithful as we are, for as long as we are. Take it. Its platinum loops shrink to a wedding ring if you like. Lethal. Its scent will cling to your fingers, cling to your knife. That's kind of neat, an onion will hang around like a lover. Think about that next time you're worried about onion breath. Okay. Checking the time here. I don't want to drive you crazy. I want to read you one other love poem and then one sort of different poem to end up on. This one is one called Dearly by Margaret Atwood. I don't know if you know Atwood. She's the one who wrote The Handmaid's Tale and Testaments. She's known as a novelist, but she's also a very good poet. And this one is one that's from her book that came out, I guess, a year or so ago. The book is called Dearly, and this is the title poem from that book called Dearly. Dearly. It's an old word, fading now. Dearly did I wish, dearly did I long for. I loved him dearly. I make my way along the sidewalk, mindfully because of my wrecked knees, about which I give less of a shit than you may imagine, since there are other things more important. Wait for it, you'll see. Bearing half a cup of coffee in a paper cup with, dearly do I regret it, a plastic lid. Trying to remember what words once meant. Dearly, how was it used? Dearly beloved, we are gathered. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in this forgotten photo album I came across recently. Fading now, the sepias, the blacks and whites, the color prints, everyone so much younger, the Polaroids. What's a Polaroid? Asked the newborn a decade ago. How to explain? You took the picture and then it came out the top. The top of what? It's that baffled look I see a lot, so hard to describe the smallest details of how all of these dearly gathered here, of how we used to live. We wrapped up garbage in newspaper tied with string. What is newspaper? You see what I mean. String, though, we still have string. It links things together, a string of pearls. That's what they would say. How to keep track of the days, each one shining, each one alone, each one then gone. I've kept some of them in a drawer on paper, those days fading now. Beads can be used for counting, as in rosaries, but I don't like stones around my neck. Along this street there are many flowers, fading now because it is August and dusty and heading into fall. Soon the chrysanthemums will bloom, flowers of the dead in France. Don't think this is morbid, it's just reality. So hard to describe the smallest details of flowers. This is a stamen, but nothing to do with men. This is a pistol, nothing to do with guns. It's the smallest details that foil translators, and myself too, trying to describe. See what I mean? You can wander away. You can get lost. Words can do that. Dearly beloved, gathered here together in this closed drawer, fading now, I miss you. I miss the missing, those who left earlier. I miss even those who are still here. I miss you all dearly. Dearly do I sorrow for you. Sorrow, that's another word you don't hear much anymore. I sorrow dearly. And then to finish up on one short poem that's sort of about love. I'm sneaking it in because I love the poem, but it's about love in a different way. And I think it's your seasonally appropriate poem. You know, it's the reason that Diwali and Hanukkah and Christmas are all this time of year. It's the reason they all have candles. And obviously, I'm talking about the shortest day of the year that's coming up in just about 2 weeks from now. And this is a poem by Susan Cooper called The Shortest Day. So, the shortest day came and the year died, and everywhere down the centuries of the snow-white world came people singing, dancing to drive the dark away. They lighted candles in the winter trees. They hung their homes with evergreen. They burned beseeching fires all night long to keep the year alive. And when the New Year's sunshine blazed awake, they shouted, reveling, through all the frosty ages you can hear them echoing behind us. Listen, all the long echoes seem the same delight this shortest day as promise wakens in the sleeping land. They carol, feast, give thanks, and dearly love their friends and hope for peace. And so do we, here now, this year and every year, welcome Yule. There you go.